Land Justice Futures Focus Community Program. Thank you, Hillary, for hitting record. For those who can't make it in person today, I'm so glad to have you with us. If you missed the chat prompt, would love if you could put your name and what community you're with in the chat. I am Brenna Cusson-Anglada. I serve as the coordinator of the Focus Community Program, and I'm here with my coworker, Hillary Moore, who serves as a community coach for Land Justice Futures, and Corinne Sanders from the Adrian Dominicans, and part of the program, and Sister Jessie Beck, Sisters of the Presentation, also part of the program. So here at Land Justice Futures, we believe that religious land legacies and property plans can play a key role in both ecological and racial healing. And I'm going to give about a 15 or 20-minute introduction to the program today, how it began, what it entails, how the program works. And then we're going to take a few minutes each to hear from about 5 minutes each from Corinne and Jessie about their own experience as participants in the Focus Community Program. And then we'll save the last 25 to 30 minutes for just open questions.
I just want to apologize up front. I'm going to need to turn off my video for this, but I'll be here listening. So.
Thank you for letting us know. Yep, if anyone needs to turn off your video for internet reasons, no worries. And if you have a question, just either put it in the chat or focus it to Hillary while I'm talking, and later just put it in the group chat. We're glad you're all here. So I am going to share my screen. That might just take a second. Please window, here we go. Okay, is everybody seeing that okay? You could just let me know if something goes wrong. Great. So our Focus Community Program is a community of practice for women religious who are ready to create bold, just, and creative plans for the lands that they love. So starting, as you probably read, starting with a 2-year cohort experience, this program builds power, connection, imagination, and practical know-how among communities while they're building land justice into the heart of their property plans. The goal of Land Justice Futures, let's make sure that works. There we go. In collaboration with movement partners and women religious, is to create land transitions that are rooted in ecological and racial healing. So we believe that land is key to both racial and ecological healing in this country. Who owns land? Who gets to govern and make decisions about land? How we treat land? It's through the decisions that we make about land today that we believe we can create a livable future for all of us. And we believe that if current property owners were to center land justice in their decisions about who will steward their land in the future, we can bring forth a really powerful transformation in our society. So what do we mean when we talk about land justice? We understand land justice to have 3 interwoven components in a land justice initiative. An initiative that would protect land from extractive development, so protection, regenerating the health of land and waters, and all of this at the same time as shifting equity and governance of land to communities who've been systematically dispossessed of land in the United States, so especially Black and Indigenous communities and stewards. So I'll share a bit about how Land Justice Futures came to be, kind of some of our story. Many of you are probably aware that we're rooted in a group called Nuns and Nuns, which first started in 2016 as a place of encounter between women religious and community-oriented activists of various spiritual backgrounds, many of whom did not claim a single religious affiliation, so earning the nickname nuns, as in checking none of the above when asked what religion they were. Kind of a clever name. But it's not always true. Not everyone was not a member of a religion, but it's a sweet name. But these dialogues that were centered on justice, spirituality, and community began taking place all over the country. And as these encounters and dialogues were unfolding, our nation, the United States, was beginning to more intensively face the intertwined crises of climate collapse and racial injustice in really big ways. And as these conversations were happening about climate collapse and racial injustice, Catholic sisters were also sharing with these younger folks and they were beginning to move through this experience of their own communities growing smaller and needing to more squarely face the process of these real decisions, making decisions about the land and the property that they steward. So the Nuns and Nuns community began asking, given the racial and ecological healing that so desperately needs to take place in our time, and given the position of women religious, who are spiritually rooted and justice oriented, what might we do together? So it was through the encouragement of sisters and movement partners that Land Justice Futures was born out of this Nuns and Nuns encounter, with the purpose of supporting religious communities to incorporate land justice into their property planning. So our Focus Community Program, this particular program began to take shape in the summer of 2022, with our first group of 7 communities joining that fall, the fall of 22. And sorry, this next slide is going to be so small, but you can get an idea of the spread. We currently have 5 communities who are in our Old Growth Forest cohort. Corinne's part of the Adrian Dominicans, who began at the beginning with us and then kind of restarted in the first year of the program again as the Prairie cohort this year. And so 9 communities are part of the Prairie cohort. And later, if you have questions and want to see it more in detail, we can share it. It's also on our website. And what does it entail? The program entails regular group reflections and learning opportunities with the entire cohort. So we get together online about every 6 weeks, and we time those meetings to be around important events that are happening agriculturally and celestially. So the solstices, equinox. So we're in tune with the rhythms of the land, and they also happen to usually fall around important feast days in the Christian calendar. So we chat online every 6 weeks and learn together. Relationship. Oh, here's another slide of immersive learning. We also build relationships with one another. So communities are doing this together. There is no one way to do land justice. And so it's important that we're sharing our experiences and what we're trying and what's working and not with one another. We also have a national Focus Communities gathering, which for the last couple of years and will again be in Racine at the Racine Dominicans in Wisconsin. This will be our 3rd year coming up. It's a 4-day in-person time together, expenses paid. We also offer a transformative curriculum, including a 2-day on-site land justice workshop for your entire congregation during the first year of the program, so that you can make sure that it's not just a small team doing the work, but making sure that your whole community is on board and engaged as well. We come to you in person. Each team receives a personal Land Justice Futures coach to guide your team through our transformative curriculum and the corresponding assignments. Each team receives a personalized community webpage and presentation by Jessica Intermill of Intermill Consulting that details your land story. So how the land that you currently steward was removed from Indigenous stewardship by European or US government and how it became property. So learning about that history particular to you. You also have access to advice from our technical partners, who are expert practitioners in real estate, law, land trusts, etc., finance. And when it comes time, customized research to locate potential new stewards with a focus on Black and Indigenous partners. We have relationships in this land justice movement around the country and folks who are looking for land, but that would be later in the program. Communities will complete the 2-year program with a new story. That's our goal, and a new story and a new vision for the legacy of your land and community. So this program really helps what we've heard people talk about. It's a lens through which of racial and ecological healing, a lens through which communities will then want to be making decisions about how they divest of land. And then there's also support, technical support, so for us to support you in that. And embodying land justice is going to look to, first I would like to talk about this a little bit. Embodying land justice is going to look different for each community depending on your needs and circumstances. I'm going to come back to this. We have developed, and this is kind of hot off the press, this design here, the general roadmap that we follow in the curriculum. Most of the first years really were in this phase, building foundations, learning about the origins of land dispossession and white supremacy and their intricate connection to the ecological crisis that we're facing now, really preparing ourselves. And that's during the time that we come and do a workshop for your whole community to kind of really sink into what it is that we're talking about here. And then the next phase, we move into clarifying parameters internally so that your own community has a good sense of what you can know and what you can't know about how you want to move forward in making decisions about your land. And then when appropriate, beginning to think about potential partners in this work. And these steps 2 and 3 are a little bit of a dance, but we try to focus on getting internal clarity before trying to make relationships with potential partners. And then the last step would be actually putting land justice in motion, which is when we could bring in our technical assistance, real estate and finance, et cetera. So some potential outcomes could be, your community has begun the process of transferring the deed of a property to a new group of regenerative stewards. Perhaps your community will have passed a resolution at your chapter to prioritize future owners of your land from a historically dispossessed community. Perhaps your community will have begun the process of creating a cultural use easement with a local Indigenous tribe or nation, allowing ongoing legal access for that nation to practice their cultural practices. Perhaps your community is preparing a vote at your next assembly to give 60% of the income from a property sale to a BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, to a collective in search of land in your region, or another creative option. Just to refer back to that slide, a land justice initiative will both protect the land from extraction while regenerating the health of the land, while expanding equity and governance to historically dispossessed communities. So it's going to look different in each situation. What do we ask of you? We ask that your community is committed to centering this exploration of racial and ecological justice into your property planning beyond your community's present stewardship. So while we support activities like removal of invasive species and things right now, we think that's wonderful. That's not what this program is about. It's about thinking about who is going to steward your land in the future beyond your community's ownership of the land. And we also ask that you have the active support of your community's elected leadership for this exploration and the support to the logistical requirements of the program, which I'll go into right now. Some of the logistics are that we ask that you form a team of 3 to 5 members of your community, and those could be definitely sisters, vowed members of your community, but they could also be staff. I know maybe Corinne can share who some of her team's made up of at the Adrian Dominicans. It could be associates or co-members, people who have an investment and have the time to dedicate to this project and who are well suited to participate. And then this team will engage this immersive 2-year experience from February of 25. In February, there's a chance we'll start in March, actually through December of 26. Attend the cohort calls every 6 weeks to unpack the curricula, meet in between each cohort call as a team, once as a team, and then again with your coach. Host our team, 2 or 3 of our staff, to come to you to facilitate a 2-day workshop for your community. So while we put on the workshop, we would ask that your team organizes the space and the food and the lodging for attendees, and the registration and recruiting your community to be there. We ask that this team provides leadership within your wider congregation around land justice. And then as many of you as you can, at least one, attending our national gathering in Racine. That's going to be at the end of May. Ideally, a team would include 1 member of elected leadership. We realize that's tricky, as leaders are have quite full schedules, but just so that there's a connection between, so leadership knows what's going on. And sometimes we understand they'll have a little bit less capacity. So we also ask for one of those team members to be a point person who does all of sort of the scheduling and logistics. And even though I think Corinne is both, and that would make sense that wouldn't be someone whose plates are already super full. And then we ask you come in with an attitude ready to celebrate. We do a lot of celebrating, especially when we're in person together. So what is the process of applying? And then I'm going to turn it over to Corinne and Jesse here soon. If you're thinking about applying, we ask that you assess your readiness. Sorry, I skipped ahead there. Does your community desire to engage in property planning for the future? Or are you searching for future stewards of your land? Would you like to do that in alignment with your values of ecological, racial, and economic justice? Do you believe leadership is supportive of this? Do you have 3 to 5 people from your community who are ready to make the commitments to be a land justice team? And we're roughly saying, although I want to check this with Corinne and Jesse, probably dedicating about 5 hours a month, each team member, to this process. If your community is already committed to creation and ecological spirituality, if you've already implemented regenerative practices into your own property management plans, if your community is studying Laudato Si or a member of the Laudato Si action platform, those will all be helpful in this program, though not requirements. Then if you think you have that, then find your team of 3 to 5 sisters, associates, or staff who can commit to joining calls with the full cohort every 6 weeks, or most of them. Participate in assignments, webinars, and meetings, about 4 to 6 hours a month. And who feel prepared that you can organize your community to host 2 or 3 members of the LJF staff to come lead an in-person 2-day workshop for your entire community. There's an information packet, which I can put later in the chat. It's also on our website that gives all these details, so you don't have to take notes right now. That will be helpful if you want to spread this to other members of your community. The information packet is quite detailed. Here you are, step 4 at an information session. We ask before your team applies that they watch our 50-minute introduction to land justice video, so everyone understands what it is you're signing up for, and that you understand what land justice is and want that for your own community. And then apply. Our application form is online. You can send it to me by November 15th. And then we're doing interviews. It's on a rolling basis. You can submit it anytime before November 15th, and we'll be doing interviews through December 9th, and with the goal of letting people know before Christmas who the next cohort will be. So I think that's it for me right now. There is our website, Land Justice Futures and the Focus Community Application, that details this whole process. And I can put that in the chat in a minute. But now I wonder if Corinne, you'd be willing to come off mute and share a few words about your own experience and what this has meant for your community.
Sure. Thank you, Brenna. That was a great introduction. It's good to be here, and I see some familiar faces from my Dominican world and LCWR world, so that's great. I'm pleased to have been asked to talk a little bit about the Adrian Dominican congregation that I'm a member of, and that is part of the land justice communities. And I can talk a little bit more about we are the group that we started a year or two in 2022, and we signed up again to be part of the first year cohort with the Prairie cohort, and I can talk a little bit about some of that reasoning as we go forward. But in terms of couple of the questions that Brenna and Hillary sent to us to talk about is, why have we found this program important for our community, and what have been some of our learnings? I think it's important for me to share that in 2022, our congregation, as many of us, were involved in campus planning for the future, looking at our buildings, looking at this land on which we live, looking ahead, 5, 10, 15 years out in terms of what did we foresee, what did we need to start planning for. And at that same time, what happened was that the land justice nuns and nuns at that time had asked, would we host a land justice retreat? And it was the first one. It was, I guess, a prototype, I think is what they would call it, as would I. And we were very excited about that. We had been in some conversations with the nuns and nuns on different things, one being this thought about land justice. And so we said yes. Now, what you need to know is when we went into that retreat, we had already, with our campus planning and looking at the land, we're really focused on, not surprisingly, land conservancy, putting, how would we look at putting where we are in conservancy? Would that be a path that we would go on in order to, from our perspective, protect the land? When we went to this land justice retreat, it was on campus. At that time, it was we planned for a one-day retreat. And as we were there in the process, as we went through the day, all of a sudden, we're talking about land justice as that lens to look at stewardship in the future, to look at, what would be our how would we look at the stewardship of this land beyond our own, and looking at land justice as that centering of racial and social equity. And all of a sudden, lights just went on for us, indicating, I mean, you could see it, for those of you, who saw, I was there. Our current general counsel was at the retreat. Our future counsel, who's now in office, we had just been elected, so we all were attending the retreat. And all of a sudden, we realized that there was a different path that we wanted to be on as we looked into our journey of land transition for where we live. That there were different things we needed to learn more about, to participate in this different journey, to engage a whole different way of understanding the land on which we live, this land that we hold sacred, and how that would enter into decisions we would be making for the future, different than the ones we thought we were on. So it was an incredibly transformative moment for us, I think, relative to the path we are now on to get us to where we are. And so we ended up being part of the Land Justice Futures community. And since then, I think that the important learning since that time for myself and many others is that there's so much more learning to happen. I mean, it truly is incredible. So it's kind of hard to focus on, what one learning has been important. But as our group started, and we did come up with a group of 5 people to be our focus community. 3 of us are sisters, myself as an elected leader, and then 2 other sisters. And then we also have 2 co-workers. Jennifer, who is our COO, is a member of our focus community, and Brad Frank, who is our director of sustainability. So those are the 5 people that work as the focus community leaders. But going back to some of our learnings, I think that the most important piece that we're engaged in right now are those foundations we're talking about. And part of that is learning our land story very deeply. We knew that we were here in Adrian, Michigan. We knew that the Potawatomi people were here at one time. And that's about as much as I knew, to be honest. I hate to say that, but that's the honest truth. And for many of us, that's what we knew. What was deeply heart-wrenching is that as we spoke more about the doctrine of discovery, which we have always talked about, but again, not really diving even deeper into the implications of the implementation of the doctrine of discovery, the heart-wrenching knowledge was to hear the story, this land story, through the work with Land Justice and with Jessica Intermill, who they talked about, who does learning the land story, that yes, the Potawatomi were here. They and other indigenous communities traveled through here, but the Potawatomi really called this place this region, for me locally, the River Raisin watershed, their home. And that to hear the story of how in a very strategic, planned manner, making treaties and breaking treaties, this land was stolen from the people. And not just stolen, they were forcibly removed from this land. And at that point, the land became property. It was zoned and sold from the government to the various European white settlers who were in this area. And the Potawatomi people were forcibly removed. In fact, they call their trail the Trail of Death, as they were led from the Southeast Michigan area down into Kansas, and then many down into Oklahoma. It was, we meaning the Adrians, talk about this as our beloved land, a land that has loved us, a land that we have loved. But to know that the land that we have loved was once loved, and integrally part of a people far before us who lost that relationship. That relationship was broken. We as Adrians were not responsible for that, but we have benefited from that. And that has called us really deeply into the work of land justice to continue to engage in that understanding, to be in relationship with each other as Adrian Dominicans, talking about what are we then called to do? What is that action we are called to, that reparative action? And how do we keep engaging that question in a manner of truth-telling and seeking reparation that we are being called to? Our charism Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, in a minute, I'm going to bring up Sister Jessie Beck, but if you want to just finish your thought here.
Yeah, I just want to say that our charism of seek truth, make peace, reverence life is what's really spurring us along to continue to discover what is true, to seek reparation, to seek justice, make peace, and to continue to put life at the center of that with our BIPOC brothers and sisters and with this land where we are. So that's short, longer than I thought.
Thank
But
you.
it's a
I'm
big
like,
story.
I should have just had you give the presentation. Actually, pretty compelling. Well, I'm gonna leave you up there because then after Jesse goes, I think we'll just take questions. And I'm guessing several will be for you. Thank you. Thanks, Jesse.
Yep. Hi, my name is Jessie Beck. I'm a presentation sister of Dubuque, Iowa. Like many communities, I think we're in the midst of both long and short-term kind of community planning. We are part of the newest Prairie cohort, so we began in February, so about 8 months ago. Our team, we have 1 member of leadership, 2 sisters, and 1 staff person, our justice promoter. And I guess the first thing that I want to say when I think about the importance of this program, I've just really noticed, I'm so aware of how the spirit is so alive and present in this movement that when I began in February, I can feel it in my being that like something important is happening here. And I get goosebumps just saying it. And I think part of that reason is land justice connects so much with our core values and who we are. So for example, our founder, Nano Nagel, is really core to our mission and spirituality as presentation sisters, like many of your founders. And I learned something new. I realized something new in the midst of this work. We never named it this, but really our founder, Nano, was resisting colonization. That was her life's work. She lived in Ireland in the 1700s when the English were occupying, like many places in the world. You know, they were limiting voting rights, stealing land and wealth by using the laws and by force, suppressing cultural identity, like all the things that colonizers do. And you know, Nano had several conversion moments that led her to be part of this resistance with, you know, ministries of education, pastoral care, using her financial resources and her social connections. And it just like, now that I see it, it's like, how did I not see that before? How did we not recognize this part of resistance to colonization as like core to our story and how we began? So that alone is just like mind blowing. And also, you know, when we look at our chapter directives, you know, what we say we're going to be about, we have a directive about working for racial equity. We have a directive about healing Earth by connecting land and people. We have a directive about discerning our property and resources. And we have committed ourselves to the inner work of personal and communal transformation. So it's like, all of that is what land justice is about. I guess the other thing I'll say, we just were fresh off of our on-site workshop. So Brenna and Hillary and Eric were in Dubuque on Thursday and Friday last week. And again, I think something important happened. We had about 40 to 50 sisters and associates, and our Dubuque area also has other communities. So the BVMs and the Dubuque Franciscans. So we had a few folks kind of overlap coming to that. And I would say I sensed a really important learning as storytelling around the history of colonization, racism, doctrine of discovery. While some of us have done some work around that for quite a while, right? It felt like kind of reckoning in a new way with that history, and very heavy. And also, I think I sensed a desire from the group gathered to engage. Like, this is important, and people want to kind of wrestle with that same idea of like, I love the land, my family loves the land, rural Iowa, this is what we're about. And also, this is how we got to be on the land, and the horrific atrocities that were committed so that we could be here. It's a real, I don't know what I don't have a lot of articulation around that, but it's important, and we're, I think, wrestling with it, and more work to do in that. I guess the other thing I'll say just briefly, I think one thing I've really appreciated about the experience thus far of the Land Justice Futures team, there's just so much thoughtfulness and intentionality that goes into the whole of the work. So as Brenna was saying, even the dates that are decided for meetings are not like a doodle. It is around like important happenings. And that's just one example. And I think there are multitudes of examples in calendar setting and in relationship building, that it's like how the work is done. It really, for me, like creates this culture of healing and wholeness. And again, like goosebumps as I say it, because it feels so important about the how it's already in practice. And I think that could be part of our current, present, and ongoing call of religious life, this call of repair and healing, that are, I think, so present in all of our charisms and community values. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Jesse and Corinne. Like, I picked the right people to represent Focus community participants. Thank you. I feel honored and touched that you're willing to speak, and honored that you're part of the program. I'm going to just bring all four of us up here and just invite questions from it's a small enough group that if you'd like to just come off mute and ask, because I can't always see, or raise your hand, or put something in the chat, and we'll try to just watch all forms. I see Julie Schwab and then Mary Beth. Julie, do you want to come off mute?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for this presentation and for lining up so many good speakers. I just have a question for you, Brenna. You live on a farm, you're a neighbor of ours at Sinsinawa, and all of your neighbors are farmers. And I'm wondering, how do you engage your neighbors with this topic? Your farming neighbors.
Like on my road sort of neighbors?
Yeah, like, in the local community, Cuba City, Hazel Green, in the area.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I mean, not much. So this program, part of this program, we're hoping to shift national cultural, like the national culture around what is land, who gets to govern land, how do we protect land? And we're putting a lot of eggs in the sister basket for a reason. Like, we think that Catholic sisters in the United States have are powerful levers in shifting national conversation about about our relationship with land, both its power to heal racial injustice and ecological injustice. And our hope is in you. I don't know, Hillary, if you want to, we were talking about this a lot last week, so I don't know if you want to add any words to that.
Just to underline what Brenna said, and even in this last workshop when we were with Jesse, we were like, I think we need to say this more often, because a few sisters came up to us and was like, oh, you should go out there and you should talk to those people or talk to someone else. And we just kept saying, like, it's you. It's actually you. You are the people that we want to invest in. There's plenty of other organizations that are working with farmers in this place or doing that. And we think that our strategic slice of the pie is with Women Religious. And yeah, just for all the things that Brenna said, but it's on purpose that we are coming to Women Religious, and that we are part of, like, we got called into this work because of you all.
we believe you have the power to shift culture. And so that's where we're focusing. Thanks. Mary Beth. Thanks, Julie.
Really appreciate your sharing with us. I think this would be really great for our congregation. I just wonder about timing of things because we are next year, we will be having our general chapter for our whole congregation and our provincial chapter. Almost like, right, if we would start this in February, then we would, be in the middle of those two things during that time. And I think that could be good, but then I also think it could be good before chapter or, having it go through this process before we have chapter and, or after we have chapter. I think there's advantages that way. So I guess I just wanted to ask a question for whoever, maybe Corinne, as far as the timing of things and how beneficial it is in shaping, direction.
Sure, I could, just say from our perspective, we had our general chapter in late June, July of 2022. And then, we didn't have the retreat until August, and we didn't, when we look back, we think to ourselves and say to each other, if we had even begun just exploring land justice, let's say, a few months before the chapter, not deep diving, but, talking among each other, it probably would have been a conversation topic of general chapter of 2022 with a specific, probably, we call them enactments. Other people have different words, directing us to go deeper. Now, that being said, we're going deeper, even though it wasn't at the 22 chapter, because we know it's very important and it's part of who we are. So I would say it's really how you might understand and how you do your chapter preparations. I don't, I would probably say I wouldn't jump in to a full deep dive while you're also trying to do that bigger chapter work that we all do. I guess you just sort of have to, I think if I were to do it over again, I would have liked to have at least been murmuring about land justice before our general chapter, because we brought forward more in a very strong way the Laudato Si commitment, which we've now, land justice is part of our response to that. So I don't know if that really helps you, Mary Beth, but timing is everything, right timing and all, but I think it might be, personally, I think I would have liked to have had it as part of our general chapter conversation of a commitment to it.
Thank you.
And our director, Brittany Catellas, is here in the background. I might bring her up on screen and see if she has, when did you say your chapter was, Mary Beth? Or just any...
Our general chapter, which we are not in charge of, by the way, is in Germany in April, May. Okay. And our provincial chapter, which we are in charge of, is in September.
Is in September. This September?
No, 2025.
2025. Great.
Yeah.
Just lurking in the shadows here. And I'll say the most important thing that I think chapter can impact is, like, there's a reason why we require at least the support, if not at least one active seat by leadership. Because as communities are discerning things, like that is such a critical part of how decisions move in community. Like, yes, everyone is a part of the process, and leadership is so critical in forming that. And so it really depends on, I think the nature of your chapter is less of a critical thing. If you have a good sense that, and every community has a different sense of like how, what the governance structure is going to look like. Are there big question marks around the leadership team or not? So it depends on how aligned you feel your community is. One, with just generally, like, are we making decisions about our land? Like, are you in a healthy place with like engaging with that as a community? And two, do you want to bring land justice on as a lens that you're exploring? I'd say even if you're entering into chapter where something like, you know, chapter's a long way off or some things might change, if you can speak pretty clearly to those two things, I think that's the most critical piece, is like, right, is land justice going to have a healthy soil to grow little rootlings as a lens that you explore? And the last thing I'll say is, you know, we understand that, you know, as Brenna gave the examples of what land justice can look like, we know that the majority of communities who participate in this program, it's not like the last day of year 2, you're going to have it all tied up in a bow and decided. Like, that's not the expectation. Wonderful if it happens, and we'll support you to go as far as you want to go. But the point, I wouldn't want a community that's ready and wanting this lens now, and you know, your land and building committee is meeting, your Laudato Si committee is meeting, you want to bring those people together. Like, if you're in that moment, I wouldn't want you to wait because you think, oh, but we couldn't, you know, make this final decision in a 2-year span. So that's what I would add.
Thanks, Brittany. I might keep you up here in case there's other questions, but I see Isabel. Isabel, you want to come off mute and I can kind of bring you on here and say bye to me.
Well, I can't underrate the importance of your conversation. Number one, was it the last person said, your last sentence, the end thing, you know, is all of this geared to congregations who have land and are now in stages of diminishment, to the extent of, we really want to be able to repair by totally giving land back to the partners, whatever we're committing to. So I just wondered if that was, in terms of the focus of this, if, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, land back to where it came from, where it belongs, where it can be cared for. Is that the focus of this whole group? Or can congregations who have other dreams about the use of their property, like, and I'm nothing to do with leadership, so I'm just saying, as me, you know, we have this incredible initiative called Fields of Sinsinawa, which is about repair of soil, repair of land, building communities within the whole farmer. It's a farmer-led learning center. So I see that as really coming to birth at the moment, and both taking root and spreading out. So I am in my own little mind trying to figure out how the conversations I'm hearing and the importance, because I know some congregations are ready, their numbers are down to 20s and 30s, they're kind of have lots of property. They may be at a very different point than where I, in my personal thing, perceive we are. And because of the work you're doing, it's like, does that exclude congregations like mine from being part of this if we're not in that position? Just thoughts.
Thanks, Isabel. I'm gonna just share this again. Just reminding how we understand land justice initiative as protecting the land from extraction, regenerating the health of the land, all while shifting equity and governance to communities who've been dispossessed of land, in particular Black and Indigenous communities. I know at Sinsinawa, you're in conversation right now with this Fields of Sinsinawa project that's getting off the ground, regenerative farmers, I think majority white regenerative farmers. And it seems like a really exciting way to protect and regenerate land. And I think the program could be helpful in talking about how to shift, how to bring equity and racial justice into that conversation in a real way. I know we get questions a lot like, is this program only interested in land back? And the answer is no. But we are definitely, I mean, land back is a wonderful way to enact land justice. And we do talk about land back a lot because we're very much in support of it. But it is definitely not the only way to do land justice. But the program is 100% like those three pieces of the pie or of the leaf all need to be present in a land justice initiative. And so we're going to support finding a way to make sure all three are there. And land back is not the only way to do that. Well, absolutely. But we would want to look at like if you already have something going on and you want to find a way to bring more racial equity and governance in, then this would be a great program. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything. I do want to make sure Hillary gets to say a few words about, or I should check the chat about what coaching is like and the role of the coach and how that works. But does anyone want to say anything more in response to Hillary or in response to Isabel? Okay.
I just dropped a link in the chat. This is like semi-published article that I think really is going to go really deep into what you're asking, Isabel. I love how you put it, Brenna. It's like, we're huge fans of land back. And if that's an option for your community, we will support you to explore it because that is one of the best ways that we've seen can support the much bigger cosmological spiritual vision that we have of restoring the land-based lifeways that have been most oppressed by white supremacy. And there are other ways. And so I would just say we're supported, we're committed to helping supporting communities to find those ways forward who really want to incorporate the racial healing element in a significant way that is as critical as everything else. It's not like as an extra or as the layer on top, but like if your community is sincerely thinking about that integration. So check out the piece if you want to go deeper because it's 9 pages. I apologize, but it's all kinds of examples of what land justice can look like.
Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, and I'm appreciative. I've asked Hillary to say some words as a community coach and as someone who's coaching 5 communities. If you could just say a few words about the role of a coach and how you view that process. Thanks.
Absolutely. So every team that comes in, every 3 to 5 person team who is coming from a congregation that has made this commitment, gets a coach. And there's quite a few coaches, and we pair us up on for all kinds of reasons. But the role of the coach is very much to accompany you, to reflect back your skills and also your growing edges, and be with you to deepen your own process for your context in particular. Who's in the room, what's needed, and also what's going to be most meaningful to you all in this journey or this roadmap. Because every land justice effort looks pretty different and is quite unique. Having that kind of tailored support with you step by step is hopefully going to find the most relevant, the most compelling, the most meaningful, and also values aligned, especially with charism and your community's practice. yeah, to find your version of land justice. More technically, that means you'll see your coaches on the cohort calls. We lead some of the content, and sometimes we have other speakers come in. You'll meet with your team to get into some of the homework post those calls, and then you'll meet with your coach. And we usually deepen on the content or grapple with a tension, or also reflect back something that we're seeing overall, like, okay, well, we heard you say you want this, but this thing is happening. How can we brainstorm and troubleshoot together? And we accompany you through the whole process. So yeah, I think the main purpose is you're not alone. And the underlying piece after that is yeah, finding somebody who's listening to actually where you're at in the process, and then bringing in the kind of support that's going to be most useful and relevant. There's a whole bunch of other things I could say about coaching, but more or less, you get tailored support every step of the way. So, coaching.
Thank you. That was perfect. Yeah, we have about 3 minutes left, and willing to take probably time for one more question. And I'm willing to stay on personally another few minutes if we have more beyond that. But I can't see everybody's hands, so feel free to come off mute. I see Quincy.
Hi. I'm just wondering, so I think the part for me that is hard to envision is how, if your congregation, like our congregation, has initiatives or exploration going on or work going on that is planning, strategic planning, like Isabel mentioned. In myself, I feel a tension between, okay, is this going to be more of a support to that work, or is this going to be sort of hindrance to that work and set us back in that work? Not that we're, so far ahead or whatever, but that tension, I feel it in myself. And I just wonder if somebody could speak to that, of how you have seen maybe both impacts of working with communities, that it, yeah, furthered their existing initiative, or alternatively sort of made them step back and start at square one, if you have any examples.
Thanks. I think I might offer this one up to Corinne, or maybe even Jesse. Just a brief answer is our goal is for it to be a support to already existing processes and help communities see that, rather than having this, we have this racism group over here, we have a land planning group over here, we have a Laudato Si group over here. It helps sort of bring those in holistically, and the in-person workshop brings all those members from those different committees together. And that might be actually a great way to think about who are the 3 to 5 members of your team. So that folks we hear over and over from communities that these different committees are working in silos, and that this work is a way to bring those silos together, especially through the formation of the team and the in-person workshop. How that's playing out, we've been at this a year and a half, so I'd love to hear what Corinne thinks about how that's playing out in real life.
Yeah, I would say you've described it perfectly, Brenna. That is what has happened here, is that as we have asked ourselves, because we have all these groups going on, and I would say I've heard numerous times that people have said the land justice conversation is the integrative. It's a great integrative piece. It brings all those conversations together, as opposed to, because that was our big concern in the first year. It was, we didn't want it to be its own piece. And we kind of were fumbling on that, but then all of a sudden in this second year that we're now in it's become the integrative piece, and the conversation, we haven't found it to be splintering or diminishing of those other ventures that we're a part of, but an integrative whole with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. And a special thank you to Corinne and Jesse, who volunteered your time to come and talk about your experience. I want to respect your time, so I want to say goodbye and let you go now. But as I said, I'm willing to hang on if anybody has more questions that we didn't get to, also we'll be sending out the recording, and we have another information session on October 9th. So you can come back and ask different questions as well. So thank you. Bye-bye. Feel free to say goodbye, come off mute and say goodbye if you'd like. And I will be here.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. It's always lovely to be with you.
Thank you.
So we'll look forward
Thanks,
to the next chapter.
Jesse.
Yep. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jesse.
Corinne.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thank you
Corinne.
all.
You too are
Hi,
just
Julie.
Hey,
fired.
Julie.